Mr. President,
The Senator from North Dakota.
I ask that the quorum call be initiated.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, we are down on the floor of the Senate, begging, pleading, trying to get anyone to listen to our pleas to once again open up the Export-Import Bank. As we look at the consequences of having closed for the last 3.5 months, the Export-Import Bank, it becomes readily apparent every day, every hour, that we are losing American manufacturing jobs. We are stressing small businesses who have a long history of reliance on the Export-Import Bank, we are, in fact, not only not helping American business, but we are, in fact, hurting American manufacturers in this country. Why would we do that? Why would we wait one more day? We were told back before the charter expired on the EXIM Bank that the reason why, even though we had 64 votes in the United States Senate for the EXIM Bank, we were told the reason why we couldn't possibly get this done is because the House of Representatives would not take this up. The House of Representatives would not move the EXIM Bank, and in fact, if it came to the floor, it was doubtful that we would actually get a vote that was favorable to the EXIM Bank. Well, a funny thing happened when we look at the reality of where the House of Representatives is. When we counted the votes this week for the EXIM Bank, guess what? Over 70% of the House of Representatives voted to reauthorize the EXIM Bank. 70%, and probably even more remarkable, a majority of Republicans in the House of Representatives voted to authorize the EXIM Bank. Now you might wonder what changed, what happened, how could we possibly have been so wrong? Well, let me tell you, no one in their right mind in the business community ever believed that we would let the EXIM charter expire. And so everybody assumed that we would do the right thing here, that the charter would go on and that this would happen. And guess what happened when we shut down the EXIM Bank, when we didn't make it possible for people to approach the EXIM Bank, to get credit guarantees, to do the work of manufacturing and exporting? All of a sudden, those small business men and women, those employees of those institutions picked up their phones and they started calling their members of Congress. And when they called their members of Congress, that's when we saw action. That's when we saw things moving in a direction that actually supports American manufacturing. This is an institution that has been reauthorized many times. It's an institution that's been in existence for decades. It's an institution that is in competition with dozens, in fact, about 80 or 90 export credit agencies run by other countries. Every day they're competing against those same agencies. So what we have is we have unilateral disarmament. We have a situation today where our manufacturers, can you imagine this, American manufacturers, long-standing manufacturers, actually considering moving their manufacturing facilities offshore so that they can compete for this export business. And so we can't wait another minute. We can't wait another day. We can't wait for another opportunity to present itself. We have to do this now. I understand and I know that I'm new to this institution, and I probably come with a sense that most times when you have supermajorities in support of something, it shouldn't be that hard to get done. And you know the president will sign it. And so I always am a little shocked when people say, well, you know, we still can't get that done because we need to find a vehicle. We need to find a vehicle. And I think, well, what does that mean? When you actually introduce a bill and you have the bill itself and the bill is sitting at the desk and you have an opportunity to not try and attach to something so somebody can hide their vote, not trying to attach it to something because you might be able to leverage another idea on there, but actually moving this bill forward. And so we don't need to look for a vehicle. We don't need to look for another opportunity to advance the XM Bank. Guess what we need? We need to bring this bill to the floor right now. We need to ask our colleagues to engage in what we should be doing here, which is debate and legislation on the floor of the Senate. And we need to resolve this issue and wrap it up. And so when we started this journey, we were told the XM Bank was in need of reform in a very bipartisan way. My office sat down with Senator Kirk's office, joined by Senator Blunt, joined by Senator Lindsey Graham, joined by Senator Manchin and Senator Donnelly, and said, what do we need to do to make the XM Bank better? What do we need to do to make the XM Bank more accessible, more accountable? And we negotiated something that's rare here, which is a bipartisan bill, the Kirk-Heitkamp XM reauthorization bill. And that bill has been the vehicle, that bill has been the kind of blueprint for how we're going to move forward. And in fact, when the House did their discharge petition, they discharged the bill that is in fact the Kirk-Heitkamp bill. And so there's no, we've got to balance this, we've got to somehow reconcile a House version and a Senate version. We can get this done today. And we can move this forward. We can send the message to the rest of the world that the XM Bank and American manufacturers are open for business. And so it makes absolutely no sense for us to wait any longer to in any way delay the movement of the XM Bank. I yield the floor.